It's time for the Sonic Frontiers review for the Nintendo Switch. Yes, I am fully aware this game is also available on beefier systems, but since I wasn't confident enough that I would enjoy the game to fork over $60 when it came out, or even half price, I waited for a great sale on Switch. I recently purchased it for $22, which I thought was low enough to buy it, even if I ended up not liking the game. Was this the case? Let's find out. Sonic, Tails, and Amy are cruising in the tornado on their way to the Starfall Islands in search of the Chaos Emeralds. Suddenly, a huge portal opens in the sky and swallows them in. Sonic awakens on one of the islands by himself, learns of his supposed destiny in relation to the islands by a mysterious voice, and begins to search for his friends. I haven't played a modern 3D Sonic game in a good while, with the last being Sonic Generations on PC. Frontiers sticks with the boost-style gameplay, but instead of all the levels designed as a typical A to B zone, most of the game world is referred to as Open Zone. This is basically an open-world concept, with you being able to explore just about anywhere at any time. Don't worry though, there's still a bunch of things to do on every island. The main goal of each is to find one of Sonic's friends and have them assist you in obtaining the Chaos Emeralds, which are all conveniently located on the island you just happen to be on. It's honestly easy to find each emerald, but the trick is actually obtaining it. Each one is locked in a device, and in order to unlock them, you must find special monuments scattered throughout, which are access points to retro-style A to B zones, or cyberspace levels as they're called. Actually, if you find a monument, you have to first unlock it with a special gear, which can usually be found by defeating specific enemies, or basically mini-bosses found in various areas on the islands. Every mini-boss is uniquely designed, and defeating each one takes some strategy. This game is a bit of a hybrid adventure RPG, since Sonic can gain XP through battles and unlock skills within a skill tree. The vast majority of these skills are battle-based, as they are different attacks Sonic can perform. Sonic can also increase various stats, such as his attack and defensive power, his max speed, and the number of rings he can hold at once. Oh boy, I feel like I got off track. Circling back to what I was saying, you have to first defeat mini-bosses to collect special gears which activate monuments which bring Sonic into a cyberspace level. Completing these will earn you keys, and once you have enough keys, you can unlock the device holding a Chaos Emerald. Do this 6 times, then you can go fight the main boss of the island, which has the 7th emerald. If you're able to reach the last emerald the boss is holding, you can take it and transform into Super Sonic and defeat the boss this way. Once you do, Super Sonic travels to the next island, only to be given the Samus Aran treatment and loses all the Chaos Emeralds, and now it's time to do it all over again. There's a large variety of optional micro quests on each island. Micro because they rarely take more than 30 seconds to complete. Some consist of panel puzzles that you have to press in a specific order, or others like extinguishing various lights in a certain area to unlock new obstacle paths and receiving an attack or defense seed which can be used to increase Sonic's stats. In addition, a small portion of the map will be revealed to you with various markers now made visible. The micro quests are fine, but I wish they were a little more difficult. Some don't require any skill, like this one where I just have to hold down the parry buttons until I complete the set task, and no, parrying at the right time isn't a condition for the puzzle, or even in battle, which just doesn't feel right. There's quite a few cyberspace levels. Some have questionable at best level designs, but most were well done. The main objective is to get to the end of the level as fast as you can, all the while collecting 5 red rings and various amounts of regular rings. While it's not mandatory to get an S rank, and some of these levels are quite difficult to do so, completing more objectives will reward you with more keys to help unlock Chaos Emeralds. Other than micro quests and cyberspace levels, there's a huge amount of obstacle courses, we'll call them, scattered all over the islands consisting of boost pads, springs, rails, and platforms. Most aren't required to engage upon, but the game would be quite dull without them, as they add a lot of overall spectacle. Plus, most, if not all, have a bunch of rings and other goodies to collect along their path, and they can be good shortcuts or just routes in general to other places on the map. There are various enemies to attack, but honestly, you don't have to fight most of them, including mini-bosses. Yes, they do drop XP and gears, but it's not difficult to level up without fighting them, and the cyberspace monuments don't demand a high number of gears to activate. One of Sonic's abilities lets him perform tricks in the air, and for every trick he'll gain 10 XP. It's fun to do this, but it's also not difficult to exploit this ability and level up quickly. Honestly, I think a good chunk of my levels came from just performing air tricks. Unfortunately, as I said before, most of Sonic's unlockable abilities are battle-based. It's unfortunate because while each move does do a different attack and damage output, once I unlocked just a couple attacks, there wasn't much incentive to quickly unlock more since the moveset I already had was usually more than enough to defeat most enemies fairly quickly. Combine this with upgrading Sonic's attack power again and again, and it further disincentivized me to quickly unlock new skills. I wish there had been more utilitarian abilities, such as perhaps make the Lightspeed Dash locked in the beginning, which in turn would limit Sonic's explorable areas, but when he unlocks it, he could go back to these areas. Now, one of Sonic's utility-based abilities is his Psyloop, which lets him leave a blue light trail behind him when holding down X. This Psyloop is the activation method for various puzzles, but it can also net Sonic rings and items from the ground. I first thought this was too generous since you could easily and quickly max out your ring count in a super short time, but it's quite helpful when encountering bosses. In addition, when your rings are maxed out, Sonic can boost even faster, which makes running around even more fun, except when you go too fast and you fall off a cliff. Sometimes, if Sonic was going too fast, he wouldn't collide with specific objects, such as springs, and would fall off the path. This was really frustrating, but fortunately, dying, so to speak, really had no negative consequence as you don't lose anything, and the game will put you back very near where you kicked the bucket. Found throughout the islands are inhabitants called Coco. You can collect and bring them to the Elder Coco to increase Sonic's top speed and max ring counts. Some Cocos are rare and hard to obtain, as they're usually at the end of a difficult obstacle. Still, it's fun to find and collect them. The graphics are a bit disappointing, at least on the Switch version. The game is locked at 720p and 30 FPS when docked. I guess it's just because of the limitations of the Switch in relation to how large the game world is compared to more powerful consoles and the PC version, and I usually don't care that much about how high the resolution is for games, but having a bunch of pop-ins as you're speeding your way through and having textures rendered during cutscenes is somewhat jarring. The aesthetics are okay, but I found that much of the land of every island was a bit barren, and again, maybe this is because there needed to be a limit on the number of graphical assets on screen, but still, parts of the islands are too bare in my opinion. Now the cyberspace levels look amazing as there's much detail. Fortunately, no matter where I was, be it the islands or cyberspace, I didn't experience any slowdown, which is especially good for this type of game. So overall, the graphics are definitely passable, but it's hard to overlook the aforementioned negative points. The controls were one of the biggest concerns going into the game. With the past Boost games I've played, I always thought there was an unnatural feel to how Sonic controlled. More specifically, the momentum of his boost and his jumps while boosting never felt correct, as he would slow down by like 90% instantaneously. Fortunately, by the time I picked up this game, some free control options DLC downloaded with it. This is a huge benefit to the player, as now you could perform some deep customizations with the controls, specifically with how Sonic performs with his actions. Unfortunately, I wish I had seen a lot sooner that the very last option in the menu was to keep Sonic's momentum going during boost jumps. I have no idea why the default selection is to have it turned off, because once activated, controlling Sonic felt so much more natural. I feel you, Sonic. This was only one custom control option, as there were several others that the player could adjust to fit their preferences better. While I'm still not a huge fan of how Sonic controls in cyberspace levels, and this is just because I'm stubborn and want the control and gameplay style of SA2, I will say that for the most part, the boost style control in Open Zone works very well, and it's overall really fun just to run around. Controlling the camera was a love-hate relationship. It was fine when running around freely, and was usually okay when going on obstacles. However, sometimes it would lock when on 3D platform or wall sections, which was frustrating, and sometimes the camera wouldn't transition from 3D to 2D, which wasn't helpful at all during 2D areas. There was an odd design choice with the map, in that you weren't allowed to open it when Sonic was near, not necessarily engaged in battle with, but just near enemies. Like, why? Did the devs think we were going to zip on out of there with fast travel to a specific Coco, which, by the way, is the only way to fast travel, to avoid battling enemies? I don't know, it's just weird. The music was great. Why? Because most of the songs were from past Sonic titles. And adding these songs to your library where you could play any song at any time was fun, since most are scattered throughout the islands and you never knew which one you were about to pick up. It was great collecting Angel Island, Red Mountain, Sonic Heroes, and the arguably best 3D Sonic song of all time.
Hanging on the edge of tomorrow.
While not common, there were various audio glitches I encountered. Like right here, the mini-boss music plays even though the mini-boss itself is nowhere near me. Or like here, Sonic comments on a structure like it's the first time he's seen it, but this is like the 5th time he's seen it.
Cool giant mirror web thing.
There's a part of the game which is honestly more fun than I thought it would be, and that's fishing with Big. Throughout the islands are collectible purple coins you can exchange with Big, and he'll let you borrow a fishing rod to fish with. Every time you reel something in, which isn't difficult by the way, you'll earn tokens. These tokens can be surprisingly traded for key items Sonic needs to progress the story, such as Chaos Emerald keys, and others like attack and defense seeds. Finding purple coins isn't too easy, but there's quite a lot hidden throughout. The best way to get them is to collect star pieces during a meteor shower that shows up randomly at night. Every star piece collected activates an on-screen slot machine, and based on the slot machine's outcome, you'll earn various amounts of purple coins. You can really clean up during this event, which can ultimately make leveling up Sonic super easy, barely an inconvenience. The main boss fights were quite fun, as most were well balanced and challenging. Unfortunately though, the final boss was easier than most of the other bosses. Each has a lot of spectacle, with QuickTime events and input commands peppered in to change up the gameplay. I have been on record several times stating that the boost-style Sonic games are good for what they are, but because I spent so many hours playing SA2 Battle, I have always insisted on that type of gameplay style over the boost games. This was my perception going into Frontiers, but I was pleasantly surprised at how well this game turned out. The boost style definitely works for open zone gameplay. There were some hiccups along the way, such as the lack of utility-based abilities, the fact that I wasn't incentivized to battle enemies more often, the camera not playing nice at times, and I know it's because it's the Switch version, but the graphical downsides are hard to overlook. Overall though, after being skeptical, I'm glad I finally played this, and while I'm not sure I can agree with a full $60 price tag, if you can get it on deal, it's definitely worth it. This game gets a 4 out of 5 with the title of Awesome.